provided that, so I hope you stick around for a little bit and enjoy one another's company. And then finally, there were a couple of people asking about confessions. So we didn't have anything scheduled, but I am happy to hear confessions after the talk. So I believe I'll probably be in the cry room. I promise not to make anyone cry if they do come to confession. So, but again, let's warmly welcome Deacon Harold. Thank you.
I mentioned yesterday during the pandemic, when I couldn't travel, I watched a little more television than I would normally watch. And I also spent more time in books of the Bible that I normally don't spend a lot of time in. So one of them was the book of Daniel. So I started reading through Daniel, and the first 3 chapters, I was like, wait a minute. What's happening in Daniel is happening right now in our culture. And so I developed this talk based on my reflections on the first 3 chapters of the book of Daniel. It's very interesting because at Mass now we're reading from the book of Daniel. Right? Today's beautiful reading about Susanna. So this is the way it starts off. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. Now, why would God do that? I mean, the Israelites are supposed to be the chosen people. They're the ones selected by God to be the face of God, to be the voice of God to the other pagan cultures around them. They're supposed to be the example of who God is to the other cultures. But instead, what happened? The Israelites got too comfortable. They got too friendly with the other pagan cultures around them. They began to adapt pagan ways of thinking, pagan ways of acting, and pagan ways of living. And as Catholics, we also have become too comfortable with the pagan culture around us. And we've started to adapt pagan ways of thinking and acting in our lives as Catholics. For far too long, we've been filled with a spirit of apathy and embarrassment about sharing our faith. For example, when we're challenged by friends or loved ones about why we're Catholic, you guys worship a piece of bread as God? You guys have to go to a man in a dark box to have your sins forgiven? You guys worship Mary. I see you guys carrying with the poles, with the statue with flowers all around, carrying around the side. You can't tell me that's not worshiping Mary. Ooh, ooh. When they hit you like that, what do? We cower. We pull the covers over our head like children. And then we wonder why, before the pandemic, 69% of Catholics did not believe that Jesus Christ was present, body, blood, soul, divinity in the Eucharist. 69% did not believe Jesus in that tabernacle. Then what are you here for? Do you think you just show up every Sunday, punch the clock, get my communion, get to heaven? You can go to Mass every day and go to hell. That's not how this works. When the culture tries to shove subjective truth down our throats, we worry about being politically correct and hurting people's feelings. And then we wonder why half of the people who join the church through OCIA leave after 5 years. Half. When unborn children are slaughtered and they're trying to redefine marriage and gender, don't talk about that. Let's stay silent. Turn the other way. And then we wonder why The median age when a young person makes the intellectual decision, I am no longer Catholic, is 13 years old. So they've effectively left the faith before they even left your house. That's what happens when we don't live our Catholic faith with conviction. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm on planes all the time. I was on a plane last year. This was leaving in Portland, so go figure. I'm waiting patiently while a woman is putting her luggage up in the bin. Now, typically as a permanent deacon, we can't wear clerical clothes unless we're like doing official ministry, hospital, prison, homeless, that kind of thing. Other than that, we can't. So I dress normal. But I always wear my crucifix and my miraculous medal because I ain't embarrassed or ashamed of my faith in public. So I'm waiting for the lady, and she turns and looks at me. She goes, "That offends me." Now, at first, I thought because I was black. I'm like, it don't come off. I said, "What offends you?" She said, "That." "This?" "Yes." "Oh, then don't look." What she expect me to do? I'll tell you this. If I was Muslim, and I was a Muslim man wearing a kufi, or a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, she wouldn't say take it off. If I was a Buddhist wearing my robes, she wouldn't say take that off. If I was a Jewish man with my big old hat and my tassels and phylacteries, she wouldn't make it take that off. "Oh, but you wearing that offensive sign of that man hanging from, ooh, take that off." Oh, no way. I will not back down. I've gotten some looks. I even got somebody, I was waiting in line, TSA, not the TSA officer, but another person saw that said child molester. I'm not even a priest, right? But still, because they saw this, that offends them. And that goes to my point. That's why they curse Jesus onto Jesus Christ, God. That's why it's not Buddha damn. Or instead of Jesus, Muhammad. They curse Jesus because even this warped, distorted culture knows who the real God is. And that's the God that they mock. And that's the God that they ridicule. And that's why Catholics are being persecuted all over the world now. In the continent of Africa, Nigeria, Uganda, India, where they're burning churches, China. People are dying rather than deny Jesus. But we're too comfortable. I've been to Papua New Guinea twice. Last year, I was there for 10 days. One of the places I spoke was the Diocese of Mendi, which is in the Southern Highlands. They call it the Southern Highlands, but it's in the northern part of the country. Very remote. No paved roads. If you go to my YouTube channel, you see my videos from my trip there. I'm driving with the priest in the car. All of a sudden, the highway ended. And I'm like, "Father, where's the road?" He goes, "Oh, we'll just keep going." I said, "There's no road, Father." "Oh, we're just going to keep going." I was like, it was like a roller coaster ride. No paved roads. We had no cell service, no Wi-Fi, and we had electricity maybe 7 or 8 hours a day. Mass was 2 hours and 20 minutes long. And nobody looked at their watch. These people have nothing, but they know they have Jesus. It was one of the most beautiful experiences. That week there, I spent a week, out of the 10 days, I spent a week up there. One of the best experiences of my life as a Catholic. It was awesome because they are so in love with Jesus and their faith. It's not enough to believe in God. We must believe God. Because if we don't, the same thing will happen here. God said, "Well, if you don't want me to rule over you, You don't want me to be your king? Okay, well, Babylon will rule over you then. So if we don't want the Lord to be the king of our lives, then by our own free will choice, God will allow whatever we love to rule over us. Now, Nebuchadnezzar continues. With some of the vessels of the house of God, he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. So he took the vessels and the vestments that were used in the worship of God that were sacred, and he put them into his temple with his gods. They just became trinkets, museum pieces. So things that used to be meaningful have now become meaningless. What else in our culture used to be full of meaning, meaningful, that has now become meaningless? Let's take, for example, the human body. 1 Corinthians 6:19, St. Paul says our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit that we have within us from God. You are not your own. You've been bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. Glorify God in your body. So I'm just going to give a couple examples. Now, if you want to get a tattoo, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I got no issue with tattoos. Some of my kids have tattoos, whatever. But I'm talking about where you do tattoos so much, excessive tattooing, where you can't even tell what color you are. Now, why do people do that? I believe it's because the only way they can find meaning in their lives, because they don't, God, faith, really, they fill themselves with it to try to find meaning. Now, I'll prove it to you. I was at the gym last year, and a gentleman walked in, tattoos all up here, on his neck, up in his face. He was like covered. And so I said, wow. Okay, I walked over to him. I said, dang, that's a lot of tattoos, bro. He's like, yeah. I said, what do they mean? So he starts to explain to me, this means this one, this means this. And at the time of my life, I was this. And he had one tattoo that was cursive, and it had a girl's name right in this part of his arm. And I said, what's that one? He goes, oh, that's my sister who died in a car accident. I said, oh, well, I'm very sorry to hear that. He goes, well, the way I remember her is I have her name tattooed on my arm. I said, well, that's awesome, but I wouldn't do that. He said, really? What would you do? I said, well, if it were my sister, I'd go to my church where I worship, and I'd find some Knights of Columbus or some other groups there, and I would start a fundraising campaign to create a scholarship at the local college or university in town, a scholarship in my sister's name. A scholarship that helps students who otherwise could not afford books or supplies that they need for school. And I'll put that scholarship in the name of my sister. And that way, because guess what? I'm going to die. And my parents are going to die. And my siblings are going to die. And when you die, you're going to rot in a box 6 feet under the ground, and no one's going to remember your sister. No one's not even going to care. But with that scholarship, long after I'm gone, my sister's name will be remembered as someone who helped other people better their lives. That's going to live on long after I'm gone. He said, I never thought about it like that. I said, yeah, all right, just something like that. Have a nice day. That was it. I'm trying to convert him, make him be Catholic. Just a different way of thinking. How about this? All the implants. I'm not talking about breast cancer, you get implants. That's fine, that's fine. I'm talking about, like, when I took my son, we used to have a thing called Guys Night Out. Because my dad left our family, so I helped my mom, as mentioned yesterday, raise my siblings. And so when I became a dad, I had no example of what a good husband and father is supposed to look like. And so I created something for my kids. I took my daughters on their first dates. They were all with me, which is probably why they're not married yet. Because I set the bar. The bar starts here. Not here. The bar starts here. I gave them the example of how they're supposed to be treated by a man, not a boy who's trying to get in their pants. I want them to see how to be treated by a man who's going to take them to heaven. So what I do for my son, I invented something called Guys Night Out. So when he was 12 or 13, I take him out we go to dinner and we talk about stuff. First it was very generic. Son, you got enough underwear? He's my only boy, right? So he can't borrow from his sisters, right? So you got enough underwear? But then, this is stuff called deodorant. Son, you probably should try and use a little more of it, buddy, But then we started talking about, son, they're trying to tell you that a child in the womb is a blob of tissue. That's a lie, son. Let me tell you the truth. And we'd have conversations. And then he would ask questions. It wasn't like a academic thing, just a conversation. Why? I want my son to learn from me, not from some social media influencer, not from some athlete or rock star. I want him to learn things about life from his father. I want him to be comfortable talking to me about difficult things. That's why we create an environment. We're eating, he loves chicken wings. So chicken wings and bacon-covered cheese fries and and all that. And we're just talking, having a conversation. And then we go see Thor or the Avenger because we're men. And one time we went to the movies, and there was a guy there who had his eyebrows came out to here, and his jaw had dropped, and he had these vampire-like teeth, and he had these scars. He looked like a demon. And I thought, wow, this must be a movie playing here. And this guy's like in costume trying to advertise the movie. So I asked the guy when he scanned our thing for the ticket, I said, what movie's playing here? You got a guy. That's pretty good. What movie? He's like, a horror movie? He goes, oh, no, he's here to see a movie. I was like, wow, why would someone do that to themselves? I mean, he literally had implant surgeries where he looked like an actual demon. Again, because people don't have God, they don't know Jesus, they're trying to find meaning in all these other things. And then the body gets transformed into an object. I already talked about human trafficking. Like I said, as a law enforcement, I could walk into a homicide scene, no problem. I could walk into a kidnapping, no problem. The only time I ever had to leave the room because I got emotional was hearing stories of women coming out of human trafficking. I viscerally got ill, like sick. And I thought to myself, how could human beings do that to each other? And all of that is fueled by pornography. So every time you look at that stuff, you're helping to fuel human trafficking. How about embryonic stem cell research? There's a good one. Currently, there are 73 diseases currently being treated by adult stem cells. 73. How many, and how do they get those samples? You get adult stem cells from fetal cord blood, or from bone marrow, or from skin cells. Because those are called pluripotent cells. Those are cells that can be dialed back to what they were like inside when you were an embryo. And because they're your own cells from your own body, they won't turn to cancer or cause any kind of weird manipulation. 73, in fact, I know people in my life that are being treated with adult stem cells from their own bodies. 73. How many diseases are being treated right now with embryonic stem cells? 0! In the next 10 years, what is the prediction for how many diseases will be treated by embryonic stem cells? In the next 10 years? 0! The score is 73-0. Why are we still destroying children? The Bible says we're made in the image and likeness of God. Salem and Demuth in Hebrew. Why can't we see that in the most vulnerable? For example, here's another example. I speak at a lot of universities, secular ones, not just the Catholic ones, but secular ones, because the Newman Centers invite me. But here's the thing, it's open to anybody on that campus can come, not just to the Catholic kids. So I was speaking at Minnesota State University in Winona, where Bishop Barron is. And during the Q&A session, a young lady stood up and asked a question, goes, "You believe a child in the womb is a person?" Absolutely. From the moment of conception, that is a human being with human rights, made in God's image and likeness. Well, it's not a human being. It's a blob of tissue. It's a parasite. A parasite. So let me see if I understand what you mean when you say that. So in a parasitic relationship, the parasite takes from the host and gives nothing in return. So what you're saying by calling the child in the womb a parasite is that because of the umbilical cord, the child is taking from the mother and not giving anything back, so therefore you say the child's a parasite. Yes, then you'd be wrong. I said, get your phone out and Google microchimerism. Let me spell it for you. Microchimerism. As I told her, as I'm speaking right now, please look this up on your phone, and if I'm saying anything wrong, you check me. What do they call that? What do they call that big thing they do now? Fact checking or whatever they call that thing? I said, do that right now. Microchimerism is a biological reality where every woman that is pregnant, every pregnancy she has, whether she has the child, goes full term, 9 months, gives birth to the baby, or sadly loses the child in miscarriage, or tragically the child dies by abortion, the woman retains the cells of every child she is pregnant with. Every pregnancy, she retains the cells of every single child she was pregnant with. That's called microchimerism. And here's what they're finding out now. That when a woman has an infection, not only will her white blood cells, but the cells of her children will come to her defense when she has an infection or her. That's called microchimerism. Am I wrong? And she just sat down. So it's not a parasite. And I told her, parasites don't grow up to be teachers or physicians or religious or doctors or attorneys. Well, no, all parasites are attorneys. But inside voice, sorry about that. And finally, they're trying to, like I said, redefine marriage. One time I was up in Seattle area. So when we're ordained deacons, for our first year, we get a deacon mentor, right? So we get a deacon who's been ordained for a while, and he kind of mentors us through our first year of ordination. So my deacon mentor was Deacon Jack, and it was a perfect fit because he was an FBI agent. So it worked out great. So Deacon Jack and I became good friends, and then when he retired from the FBI, he moved up to Seattle because his kids were there and the grandkids were there, so him and his wife moved up there. And I was doing a gig, and I call these things gigs. It's a term of, I'm a musician. I played in the jazz band at Notre Dame. I played guitar. And so I still use and my dad was a professional musician. I played on a couple of his records, so I use the term gigs, term of endearment. So I was up in the Seattle area, and I said, Deacon, Deacon Jack, let's get together. So we got together, we're having lunch at a restaurant. And during our talk, we talked about, what life is like in his new parish up there and everything. And we started talking about music in the parish. Now, as we're talking about music in the parish, a waitress comes over, not our waitress, but another waitress, very nice young woman, comes over and says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard you guys talking about music. Are you musicians? And she was wearing a wooden cross, not a crucifix, but a pretty good-sized wooden cross. So Deacon Jack says, no, we are actually deacons in the Catholic Church, and we're just, reconnecting again. And he says, I see you got a cross on. Are you Catholic? She said, no. I used to be Catholic, but, I grew up in Texas, and my parents got divorced, and my dad moved up here, and I was living with my mom for a while, and that didn't work. So now I'm living with my dad, and my dad doesn't go to church, so I don't go to church. So Deacon Jack says, well, you are most welcome to come to my church. In fact, it's not too far from here. And she said, oh, okay, thank you, thank you. And then she paused and said, can I ask you guys a question? What do you guys think about gay marriage? Now, at this point, Deacon Jack takes a sip of his coffee and looks at me like, your turn. Because he'd been doing all the talking to this point. So I said to her, what is marriage? I mean, literally, what does the word mean? She goes, I'm not sure. I said, it comes from the word matrimony. In fact, the Catechism of the Catholic Church does not refer to it as a sacrament of marriage. It is a sacrament of matrimony, if you look it up. So matrimony comes from two Latin words, matrimonium. Matri is a derivative of the word mater, which means mother. And monium is a suffix ending in Latin, which means the state or condition of something. So literally, matrimony, marriage, literally means the state or condition of motherhood. So if you want to redefine marriage, you have to change what those objective words actually mean. That's my first point. My second point is this. Marriage has always understood to be a relationship between a man and a woman and any children they have together, which is the heart, the soul, the center, the foundation, the nucleus of civilization, culture, and society. For 6,000 years of recorded history, there's always been marriage between a man and a woman because of what that relationship does for the entire culture, the entire civilization and society. You're advocating for a relationship that the only thing it benefits are the two people. And it doesn't matter if it's a man and a man, woman and woman, woman in a bridge. Man, it doesn't matter. It only benefits those two people. And we should live in a society that is concerned about the common good. What is good for all of us, not just what's good for a group of individuals. So if they want to be in a relationship, that's their business. But don't call it marriage. That's not what it is. And so she starts pushing back a little bit. She says, well, wait a minute. People should be able to have children. I said, well, first of all, they can't have children. That's not the way. Well, they could do in vitro. Time out. Do you even know what in vitro fertilization is? Well, yeah, that's when they have a test tube and they make it. I said, let me explain to you how it works. IVF 101. In vitro fertilization is where because a woman, by the way, when a girl is born, on the day she's born, she has all the eggs in her ovaries that she will have for her entire life on the day she's born. A woman's body does, unlike blood cells or other skin cells, your body does not produce more eggs. You have all the eggs you will have for your entire life, women, on the day you are born. When you reach puberty, your ovaries will release one egg, And if that egg doesn't get fertilized within 48 hours, it washes out with the next menstrual cycle. That pattern continues until menopause, which is from the devil. Just saying. Because we're there. Just saying. I said, so what happens at IVF, they give a woman a chemical which causes multiple egg releases. So what they do is they do that on purpose. So they gather those eggs, they put them into like a petri dish. Then they take a sample from a man who may or may not be her husband, and I'll just leave it to your imagination how they get that sample, and they mix them together, and they create, call it what you want, zygote, blastocyst, embryo. It's a human being at the earliest stages of development. We have names for human beings at all stages of development. We have infants and toddlers, and now they got the new one, tween, then teen, then young adult, then middle age, then old. And we also have names for human beings before they're born. Zygote, blastocyst, embryo, doesn't matter. It's just a name for a human being at a particular stage of development. And so what happens when they mix those together, they allow those cells to get to a 8 to 10 cell division. Then they take some of the fertilized embryos, some of them. Let's say there's 20. They take 8 and they implant 8 of them in the uterus of the woman. What happens to the other 12? They either cryogenically freeze them for use at a later time, or they dump them down the drain. Why? Because, look, when I was a police chief on the college campus for 11 years, one of my responsibilities was environmental health and safety. So I was in charge of all the chemicals on campus and their proper disposal. There are certain chemicals, especially in organic chemistry, you have to treat those chemicals with the utmost respect. But yet a child just gets dumped down the drain or frozen in a locker. Now, let's just say, now they wanted one child. Let's just say 3 of the 8 take. They're having triplets. Now they'll go to another doctor that's going to talk to them about selective reduction. Which child do you want to keep? Because we're going to get rid of the other ones because you only wanted one child. So 19 children die so you can get the one child that you think you have a right to. I said children are not bargaining chips. What children have a right to is a mother and a father. That's what children have rights to. And she said, well, you keep talking about natural this. None, that doesn't matter. Natural, oh, it doesn't matter? Oh, okay. Let's do this then. Let's take all of our same-sex attracted brothers and put them on an island. Let's take all our same-sex attracted sisters 10,000 miles away and put them on an island. Then let's take the 98% of the people who are heterosexual and put them on an island 10,000 miles away. If we come back in 150 years, who's still going to be here? So it kind of does matter. Well, you know, you're black, and your people fought for their rights, and, you know, we're just trying to advocate for the rights. I said, whoa. Apples and oranges, my friend. Being black does not change the definition of marriage. Apples and oranges you're comparing here. And so we kept going like that. So finally she had enough. And so we agreed to disagree. Agreed to disagree. And Deacon Jack was like, whoa, that's pretty. And there was no yelling or screaming. Just the way I'm talking to you now, that was our conversation. He was like, wow, that was pretty intense. I'm like, oh, well, comes with the territory when you do what I do, you know. So right before we left, we paid the check, and I said, let me go find her. Let me just find her. So I went and found her. I said, look, I just want to say that I appreciate the fact that even though we had a pretty intense discussion, that you didn't do what most people do when I try to have a discussion like this. They mock me and make fun of me and ridicule me. They just attack me. In Latin, it's called an ad hominem attack, where they attack you personally and don't even bring up your argument. They just attack you personally. I said, that's what people do, but you didn't do that. In fact, I would admit, you've actually were very respectful. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate that. And she said, you know what? You're the first Catholic person that I talked to about this who didn't go ballistic. And she turned, hand to God, she turned to Deacon Jack and asked for directions to his parish. When I tell you that young people want to hear truth, that's what I'm talking about. They want the truth that sets them free to love. They want the truth, because remember, truth is a person. Truth's not an idea. Truth is Jesus Christ. The truth that sets them free to become the person who God created them to be. And notice with the marriage too. For example, a woman in Seattle, 3 hours north of me in Portland, attempted to marry her apartment building. You can look this up on the internet. Look it up yourself on Google. A woman in Iowa attempted to marry herself, and the judge allowed it. It's called sologamy, when you marry yourself. What are arguments like in that family? A man in Japan spent 18,000 US dollars, I don't know how much yen that is, attempting to marry a hologram that calls him Lord and Master. That's what you do, right? You call him Lord and Master? Of course you do. He's like, yeah. Yeah. But notice in all of these things I mentioned, what is the one common thing? Satan is trying to attack one of the most creative and powerful forces in the universe: motherhood. Think about this. The greatest example of what it means to be human is not a man, not a pope. It's a wife and a mother. The greatest saint in the history of our church is the Blessed Virgin Mary, a wife and a mother and a virgin. Go over all of that. The greatest example of what it means to be human. And Satan's trying to destroy that. All right. He continues, Nebuchadnezzar. So now he commands his chief eunuch Ashpenaz to bring some of the people of Israel. Some? Well, who specifically? The youth. Handsome and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, and learning. And what he's going to do with these youth? Teach them the letters and the language of the Chaldeans. So Nebuchadnezzar starts the process of brainwashing the best and the brightest of Israel's youth. Now, you can't tell me that this culture is not trying to brainwash our own children. So I'll tell you two ways that they're doing it: portable and through the education system. Portable, first of all, these. For many of our young people, this is what they worship. They won't pick up a Bible, but here's what, this is their religion, and this is how they worship. What I call the death scroll. The death scroll. TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. Please don't make me think. Please make me laugh. Please entertain me. Please don't let me take life seriously. Please. This is their Bible. Well, they need to understand that this is a tool. This is not your life. Example. I get asked out to dinner frequently. Sometimes I say no, sometimes I say yes. Now, if I am in a mood where I say yes, I go to dinner, and sometimes most of the time, people will take their phone and put it on the dinner table. And I'll say, can you please put that phone away? And they say, well, why? I said, well, let's see. You asked me to go to dinner and spend time with you. So when you put that phone on the table, what that tells me is whatever happens on that phone is more important than you being with me right now. Then why am I here? Oh, okay. Most of the time they put it away. But if you don't put it away, I'm going to leave. You don't believe me? Ask the youth minister in Toronto, Canada. He wanted to go to lunch. I said yes. He took his phone, put it on the table. I kindly asked him several times to please put it away. He refused. I got up and left and took an Uber back to the hotel. If you can't imagine your life without a phone in your hand for an hour, you have a problem. And you need to know this, my young friends. You think you delete stuff off your phone? They keep everything. Let me give you a real life example. I was a police chief on the college campus for 11 years. I had a girl, 20 years old, who was a junior, came into my office and said that a young man was sending pornographic pictures of himself to her on his phone. This was my introduction to, by the way, to Snapchat. Really? Let me see the pictures. Well, they disappeared. I said, what do you mean they disappeared? I got pictures on my phone of my wife and kids. They don't disappear. Well, it's Snapchat, and you have to put on the phone. They last, I don't know, how long do they last? You guys don't have Snapchat? Good. But anyway, it's like, how long do you know? 24 hours, and they disappear. So I said, oh, okay. So I said, thank you. So I brought the guy in, the guy she's accusing. I said, do you know such and such student? Yes. Well, she's claiming that you sent pornographic pictures of yourself to her on her phone. And he went like, he put his head down like this. He went, no, let me tell you what's going on. I'm a virgin. And I plan to stay a virgin until I get married with my wife. There's a group of girls in my class that think that that's funny. And they're having a contest between themselves to see who can get me to break my vows before I get married. I'm not sending pictures to them. They're sending pictures to me. Really? Let me see the pictures. Well, they're gone. They disappeared. I'm like, so I'm thinking, what do I do now? Basically, I have he said, she said, no evidence whatsoever. So how do I proceed in investigating this? So then I had a thought. I went back to the young lady. I said, what do you want to do here? Do you want to press charges? Or do you just want to go through the university's internal discipline system? She said, I want to press charges. Good. Because what did that allow me to do? You're going to cheat because I know you know. What did this allow me to do once she said she wanted to file charges? When I did file those charges, what did that allow me to do? Get a subpoena for what? I could care less about her phone. No, I don't care about anybody's phone. I got the subpoena for Snapchat servers. You can delete stuff off your phone. Those services keep everything. So for the window of time that she told me that this was happening, I got her number, got his number, got the subpoena, and I got what I needed. It took a couple weeks, but I got what I needed. So I brought her back in, sat her down across the desk from me. So it was me, I had a folder, and she was sitting across the desk. I said, I'm just about finished my investigation, and I just want you to know when I brought the young man in here, he actually said that he wasn't sending pictures to you were sending pictures to him. That's a lie! He's just trying to get, I said, that's what I thought too, until I saw this. I slid a picture of her naked behind. Date, timestamp, IP address from her phone to his phone. She's like, where'd you get that? The same place I got this one. And this one. And I started sliding, and she was like, And that young man was right. There was not one picture from his phone to her. And in fact, there were other girls there. I don't know who, there are other IP addresses. I said, who are these other girls? I don't want to turn in my friends. I said, let me tell you something right now. You're going to tell me who those other women are, or you're going to find another place to go to school. And we end up throwing her out of school. They keep everything. And let me tell you this. Many employers now are starting to look at social media accounts to make hiring decisions. That's what I did. If an officer wanted to apply to work for me, on the application, social media, what are your handles? If they wouldn't give it to us, you're done. You don't get past the application process. Why? Because you are representing me out in the field. Amen? Ask this guy's a cop right here. You don't represent yourself. You are representing a department. You are representing an agency. And as the chief, you're representing me and my philosophy of how we do policing. So if, for example, we deal with a lot of intoxicated students. If the student goes on your file and sees you in a drunken stupor party with half your clothes on, don't you think that may taint the investigation this officer is doing on you? How's that going to reflect on our department? Ooh, they don't think. You need to think deeply and seriously about everything you guys are posting on your social media accounts. So that's one way. And video games, right? Video games. You know, I meet a lot of young men who have zero social skills. You know why? They spend all their time on, for example, this gentleman. If I'm going to meet you for the first time, stand up. What's your name? You forgot?
No, I was trying to think about.
You're trying to think about, okay.
Yeah.
So if I meet you for the first time, you see what happened? He shook my hand firmly. He looked me right in the face and introduced himself. When I meet young men today, this is what happens. Hey, I'm Deacon Harold. No, you're Deacon Harold, right? Yeah, do it. Yeah, do it. See, he look wimpy little, and he put his head down. He can't even look me in the face. Oh, that was perfect, man. I like it. Yeah, it's awesome. So many young, why? They spend all their time doing this. They have no social, they can't look in the face, they can't even have a conversation. And she's like, yeah, she's not hurt, like, yeah, that's true. Right? This is Babylon ruling over our children. The second, the educational system, where they're trying to, right? 8 years of grade school, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. Brainwashing. I thought that higher education systems were supposed to be a place where you teach young people how to think. They've now become indoctrination centers that are telling young people what to think. Even so-called Catholic schools. And I'll tell you this, if your Catholic school or whatever Catholic school is not teaching the Catholic faith, don't send your kids there. And it hurts me to say that because I saw night after night after night my mother as a cardiac care nurse working the 11 to 7 graveyard shift at Beth Israel Hospital in Newark, going to work with holes in her shoes and runs in her stockings because we needed stuff. Why? So she could give us a Catholic education, create opportunities for us that she never had. And it hurts me to say that. And I've been educated in Catholic schools my whole life. Grade school, high school, college, graduate school, all at Catholic institutions. And I'm telling you, don't send them there if they're not teaching the Catholic faith. All you're paying for is a very expensive public school. But I have to tell you something. I talked to your little ones today. Kindergarten through 5, I only have one talk. Usually that's not my age group, but I have one talk, listening to God. These kids know that I was impressed. Usually when I ask questions, they just don't say anything. These kids were active. They were engaged. They knew the answers to the questions I was asking. I was like, dang, these kids are on it. So there's something good happening here. So you guys are good. But I'm telling you, there's other, because you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for Babylon to come in and destroy your child's faith. You're paying for that. If they're not Catholic, don't waste your money. It's better for them to go to a public school and fight for their faith rather than spend the money to get the same thing that's happened to him in a public school. Okay. So now Nebuchadnezzar continues. He took away their worship. He's taken away their youth. What's next? Among these three, among the young men that they gathered, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. But he changed their names. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, Azariah, Abednego. He changed their names. Isn't that interesting? Why did he do that? The same reason why people are changing names today. Change your name, change your identity. You are no longer going to worship the God of Israel, so I'm taking away your beautiful Jewish names, and I'm going to give you, because all those gods, by the way, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they're the names of pagan Chaldean gods. So he takes, now why are names important? Why are names important? Let's take a look, for example, the archangels. Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. By the way, all those names in the Bible mean something, every single name. So, for example, the El, after the end of their name, is short for Elohim, which is one of the spoken names of God. All right? So in the scripture, when you read Hebrew, it has God's name, you know, no one's recording, right? Yahweh. Yahweh. You're not supposed to say that name, right? It's Yah. In Hebrew, there's a Yahweh Vav He. Yahweh Vav He. So but you can't say that. In fact, when you're reading Hebrew, when you come across that name of God, you say Elohim. They don't pronounce. In fact, Father Mitch, when we were learning Hebrew in graduate school, he would write the name on the board, but then add letters at the end to change the meaning. Then you can erase it, because you can't erase God's name. That's how sacred the name is. So Michael, Michael, means who is like God. Gabriel means the strength of God. Raphael means the remedy of God. Daniel means God is judge. Right? And so Hananiah and Azariah, the IAH is a shortened form of the Tetragrammaton, but you can't use the whole name, but you can use part of God's name in your name. So Hananiah means God protects. Azariah means God will help. So these guys had sacred, holy, godly names. And Nebuchadnezzar's trying to strip that from them. Change your name, change your identity. So you have to ask, like I said yesterday, that my name is Deacon Harold. Deacon from Greek diakonia, which means servant, and Harold is Old English, comes from Heribald. In fact, if you read Beowulf, you'll see that name in there. It means mighty in battle. So my name literally means the servant who is mighty in battle. What if someone said, nope, your name now means parked across the street? Who are you to change The objective words that make up my name, now they don't mean they mean what you want them to mean. They don't mean what they actually mean. That's what this culture has done. So for example, in the Supreme Court Obergefell decision, let's just say that this was water, okay? And I said to you, what is this? What is this? Water, right? The court basically said, nope, this is Pepsi. What you thought was water from all time and eternity, we are now telling you and redefining and saying that this is Pepsi. What is this? Some people said Pepsi. That's the problem. They throw this stuff in our face because we're spineless, weak in our faith. This culture runs roughshod over us. Because we say nothing, because we're embarrassed and ashamed to talk to our kids about difficult issues, challenging issues, not in your face, but they need to know, how do I respond to this as a Catholic? Because we're afraid to do that, Babylon is taking over, and your kids leave the faith. Let me give you a perfect example of what I mean. I was in Washington, Illinois, in the Peoria Diocese last year, doing a parish mission just like here. First night of the mission, I'm greeting people in the back of the church. This young couple in their mid-20s come up to me and say, Deacon, just want to let you know we're not practicing our faith, we're not going to church. Oh, but you came to the mission. Yeah, it's my mom's birthday. When I asked her what she wanted, she goes, the only thing I want is for you to come to the mission, so we're here. And I said, well, thank you for honoring your mom's birthday wish. And the husband looked me dead in the face and said, if I would have heard teaching like that, I never would have left the church. To my face. When I tell you that young people want to hear truth, again, the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15, it always has to be in love, but it has to be the truth. When we don't do that, then the culture runs roughshod over us and changes everything. We just sit back and say, wait for a bishop to issue a statement, which is way too late. We need to be in front of the issue, not coming up from behind, issuing statements after the fact. We need to be ahead of this thing. And we're not, because we're afraid. Our identity is a divine identity. So for example, they say to me, you are a black Catholic. No, I'm a Catholic who's black. What do you mean? Are you denying your black identity? Nope. Because when I die and stand before Jesus Christ to be judged, he's not going to ask me how black I am. Deacon, I gave you 3 talents: husbandhood, fatherhood, diaconate. Where's my 30, 60, 100-fold return on the investment I made in you? The investment I made with my life. Or did you bury it? Because you were afraid to talk about difficult things, because you were afraid of what people are going to think and what people are going to say and not get likes on your social media, or people are going to complain to the bishop. Is that, you're going to do that, and I did that for you? I had those nails driven into my body, and I suffocated to death on there, the most horrific, embarrassing death, and you couldn't stand up for me? Ooh. Mm-mm. We are warriors. And again, the model is not getting in someone's face and like the way I've been talking tonight to the young lady at the restaurant, the lady who asked the young lady who asked about the parasite. Did I yell and scream? Nope. The whole idea is, how do I get this person in front of me to want to listen to more of what I have to say? That's the key. Not winning arguments. That's the big mistake we make as Catholics. If I just give them this devastating argument from Aquinas, if I just give them a catechism, if I just do this, if I just say this, I know I can convert them. Wrong. We can't convert anybody. We're not that good. Only the Holy Spirit can convict minds and hearts. Remember, we're just the instruments. God is the musician. And we need to be finely tuned instruments in his hands. So, What is our divine identity? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Ephesians 5:25 is divine identity. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. How did Christ show his love for the church? He died for her. So men, when you stood at the altar and took those vows, you said, I do. What you really meant was, I die. Because when you stood and took those vows, that was the day you died. You died to your lust. You died to your pride. You died to your selfishness. You died to everything that separates you from having a deep, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ, so you could give yourself, your life, fully to your wife and to your children. You died that day. And if you're not living like that, that means you're not living your fatherhood and your husbandhood from the cross of Jesus Christ. He broke himself open and poured himself out in love. That's the model of how we are supposed to lead, man. You are the heads of your family. No question, no, own it. You are the head of your family. Why? Not because you're the boss. If you think you're the boss, you're an idiot. You ain't the boss of nothing. The reason why you're the head, you are the chief servant. Jesus gives us the model. I have not come to be served, but the greatest among you is the least. And in Mark's gospel, the servant of all. That's the model. That's our divine identity. And sometimes I'll go to parishes where there's a lot of people of color, maybe Hispanic or African and Asian. Well, you don't understand our culture, the way we treat women. Oh, really? Let me see. Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Oh, except for you Asians and Hispanics and Africans who get to treat your women differently. There's no exception here. Your culture is meaningless when it comes to how you treat women, because the standard is Jesus Christ, not your culture. The standard is Jesus Christ and our faith, not your culture. So now, took away their worship, taken away their youth, taken away their names, their divine identity. Now the coup de grace. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a golden statue. And I'm going to bring that golden statue around to all the Israelite communities. And when you see that statue, you will bow down before it. If you don't bow down before the statue, I'm going to burn you alive. So what happened? They start bringing around the statue, and a lot of Israelites start bowing down. Just like we Catholics bow down and worship to the culture. Coming to Mass is not enough to get you to heaven. If you don't take what we receive here and live it out there, then this means nothing. Christ died for nothing. If we don't take this deep, rich, beautiful faith and give it away as a gift to this culture that is so hurting and broken and in need of a witness. So they go around, and then they get to Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael. They said, oh, no, we ain't doing that. Nope. So they're brought before the king. Did I hear right? That you guys aren't going to bow down? You heard right, bro. No, we ain't going to do that. And he said, well, if you're not going to do that, I'm going to throw you into the fiery furnace. And here's what he adds. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands? Ooh. Nebuchadnezzar throwing it down now. He's like, who's the God that's going to save you? Why? Because I'm your God now. I took your worship. I took your youth. I took your names. I'm your God now. Ooh. Who's going to save you from me? He throws it right in their face. And I love these three dudes. Here's their reply. If it be so, our Lord, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand. Let me tell you something, Nebuchadnezzar. We believe in a God who saves. We believe that the power of God will rescue us from whatever you have in mind for us. But here's the best part. Here's the best part. But if not, if, they're saying if today is the day that the Lord is asking for our lives back. He gave us life. If this day he's asking for it back, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up. We'd rather die than worship any other god than our God. They are the prototype for the martyrs. You know my favorite martyrs? The ones in the Roman canon, or Eucharistic prayer number 1, or the long one, right? Felicity, Perpetua, Agatha, Lucy, Agnes, Cecilia, Anastasia. Those women died rather than deny Jesus. They said, we'll torture you, we'll rape you, we'll cut your genitals off, we'll do all that. All you got to do is just turn away from Jesus. You can go home tonight. They chose death. Now you're probably saying to yourself, oh, I would too. I would die for Jesus. Really? Let's just say, without my law enforcement friend here, that terrorists came in here, locked all the doors of the church, blocked them, and said the only way you're getting out of here is to go up to the tabernacle, open it, take out a host, spit on it, throw it on the ground, step on it, and curse Jesus. That's the only way you're getting out of here. If not, we'll shoot you in the head. Not so easy now, is it? Oh, we say, oh, I love you, Jesus. You're the heart and the center of my life, except when you're asking me for that life back. Except. The martyrs made no exceptions. These men made no exceptions. But you're saying to yourself, well, I got to watch The Chosen tonight, or I got grandkids, or I got a job, or I have my life, and what? And we think about all these things. And you know, some of you may even say, you know what? I'll do it. God knows in my heart that I didn't really mean it. But did that what the martyrs did? Did Felicity say, oh, you know what? Let me just deny God. He knows in my heart that I really didn't mean it. None of them did that. I'll tell you what I would do. I would go up to the tabernacle. I would open up the ciborium, and I would start consuming as many hosts as possible so they have the least amount of chance to desecrate Jesus before they shoot me. I have no issue with that. That's fine, because I will not let them desecrate. You know, we have life insurance, and my family will be taken care of. But I will not stand by while somebody desecrates Jesus and we do nothing. When they mock Jesus on television, oh, we still pay every month for whatever cable service you're using. We give them our money every month because we have to be entertained. And we get upset when we see things on there, but we still pay for it. Why? That's why I don't watch television. Waste of time. Except for EWTN, watch that. Everything else. So what did Nebuchadnezzar try to do? He tried to cancel them. He tried to deplatform them, just like YouTube tried to do to me 2 years ago. I got an email from YouTube. After a recent review of your current uploads, we have decided that your content does not create a safe environment for our community. Therefore, we are demonetizing you. So I don't know exactly what that meant because I have somebody that does social media for me. And so I checked out. Basically, they're not taking down my channel. They're not removing any videos. They're just saying you can't make money off of the videos. I said, oh, is that all? So I wrote them back. Thank you for letting me know. Keep your 30 pieces of silver. They didn't know what that meant, but I did. But what's interesting to me is who is not being canceled in our culture today. We already talked about pornography, human trafficking, Planned Parenthood, and transgenderism. And let me just say a quick thing about this. Let me start off by saying, we are called by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ to love every single human being with the love and the heart of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ without exception. Those who are same-sex attracted, those who are transgender, every single person we are called to love with the sacred heart of Jesus. If you don't love every single person that way, you're not Catholic. Bam. We are not filled with hate because we disagree with someone's lifestyle choice decision. That makes us hateful. That's their definition. That's not who we are. So during the pandemic, there was a study that came out by the American Psychological Association that said that the surgeries that were going on, transitional surgeries, were benefiting people who are confused about their gender. That study had to be retracted because a second follow-up study came out that said the biggest data set shows there is no psychological benefits to patients of hormonal or surgical transition. No psychological benefits whatsoever. What we need to do is find ways to help people feel comfortable in their own bodies. We have to be respectful, we have to be compassionate, and we have to be truthful. We love our brothers and sisters enough not to lie to them like the culture is doing. We love them enough not to lie to them. The Catholic principle is this: we love everyone, but we always don't love their actions. And we judge actions, we never judge people. That's the principle. So, the largest transgender study in history came out. It's called Transsexuality Among Twins, Identity Concordance, Transition, Rearing, and Orientation by Dr. Milton Diamond in the International Journal of Transgenderism, Volume 14, Issue Number 1. The study said this, that after puberty, so when the natural God-designed process kicks in called puberty, 75 to 95% of young children who express confusion about their biological sex outgrew it. So in other words, if you do nothing and just allow the God-given natural law design process that God instilled in every human being to run its course, 75 to 95% of young people who are confused about their gender will outgrow it. That's not me, that's not the church, that's this study, which has nothing to do with the church. In fact, because of studies like this, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and other Scandinavian countries who were the leaders in the whole transgender movement, every single one have now pulled back and stopped. England, the largest transgender center, Tavistock, in England, closed. Just recently, the American Association of Plastic Surgeons came out and said, we will no longer do those type of surgeries anymore. Why? Because now they're discovering the truth. Now, what is the truth? And this should hurt our hearts. The suicide rate for people who are same-sex attracted, suicide rate is 40 times higher than the normal population. Now, the culture is saying that's because people aren't accepting them. And because they're not accepting them, they're ending their own lives. That's not true. The studies show that they had issues, and they were told by the culture, the way you resolve this is to do all the surgery, and then once you do it, you cannot go back. You cannot go back. You do all that, and then after all of that, they still have the issues. And that's why they killed them. And that should hurt us to the core. And this is why we need to stand up for our brothers and sisters. Not point fingers, not go, ew, you're disgusting. No. We need to love them with the love in the heart just by being truthful to them. And here's the thing, I'll end with this piece. Say that there's an earthquake that devastates Weirton. And 1,000 years from now, archaeologists will come and dig through the ruins of old Weirton. And as they're digging through the ruins, they find skeletons, 1,000-year-old skeletal remains. They'll go to one skeleton, hey, I found one. They come over, they dust it off. And, oh, yes, that is a male. He's about 41 years old. Yeah, I could tell by his bone density, he's probably a little bit overweight. Yeah, we can, okay. Oh, here's a female. Yeah, we can tell by her hip displacement that she had at least 2 kids. Yeah, we can tell she was this tall. She's probably Asian by her features on her skull. They can tell in 1,000-year-old bones, man, woman, age, height, race. What they won't be able to do is say, oh, they're transgender. We need to live and have our young people understand the facts. We love people even when they hate us. Jesus says, love your enemies and pray for them. How many people pray for, don't raise your hand, but I doubt many people pray for people that you hate or can't stand being around. How many of you pray for them every day? But that's what Jesus says. Love your enemies and pray. I pray for people, when I get some nasty emails sometimes, because people don't like what I have to say. I'm always going to speak the truth in love like I'm doing tonight, but some people don't like that. And they write me things like, you should never have been born. And it hurts. I'm not going to lie. It hurts when we get emails. And human nature, I get 99 emails that love what I do, but it's the one that I focus on. Why? Why couldn't I get through to that person? What's going on? I just realized, you know what people do? They go on my Amazon page and they put 0 stars. They haven't read anything I wrote. They just put 0 stars to knock my ratings down. They do it on purpose. Could care less. Because they spat on him, beat him, mocked him, ridiculed him. Jesus says, pick up your cross and what? Follow me. So what happens? Nebuchadnezzar takes them and throws them into the furnace. In fact, the furnace was so hot, he stoked up 7 times hotter than it normally is. It was so hot that the soldiers that threw them in there, they burned up just from the heat coming out of there. He threw them in. But were they burning? No. What were they doing? They were praising God. In the midst of the flames, they were praising God. Blessed are you, O Lord God of our fathers, and worthy of all praise, for your name is glorified forever. For you are just in all you have done to us. All your works are true. All your ways are right. All your judgments are truth. What are we doing in the midst of the flames in our culture? Are we whining and complaining because of what we're seeing on CNN or Fox or whatever you're watching? Are we complaining about what this person is doing, this politician is doing, and this other person is doing? Or are we saying, you know what? God's in charge. I'm going to focus on that. When you're going through a storm in your marriage, are you going to go to counseling? Oh, I don't need to go to counseling, especially guys. I don't need to go. I can work this out myself. No, you can't. Even Jesus needed help carrying his cross. What makes you think you do this by yourself? Are we honoring and praising God in the midst of the flames of the culture all around us? Are we just complaining? Or are we saying nothing? Then Nebuchadnezzar says, those dudes ain't burning. What's going on? Bring them out. So they come out. And here's the part that gets me every time I read that. They came out. they didn't look or smell like they were even in the fire. I think that's a little bit of a shame. You know how when you cooking out in the backyard, you got those steaks and burgers on the grill, and your clothes be smelling like burger. That's a good smell, guys, right? Come on. They didn't smell or look like they were in the flames at all. Nebuchadnezzar saw that. He heard their witness, and he saw that. And what does Nebuchadnezzar say now? Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who delivered his servants, who trusted in him, and set at naught the king's command, and yielded up their bodies, rather than serve or worship any god than their own God. Therefore I make this decree: any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn from limb to limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who can deliver in this way. Guess what? Nebuchadnezzar's now woke. See, this culture says that we're asleep and we need to be woke. We need to be woken up. No. They're asleep. Like Nebuchadnezzar. They're the ones that are asleep. And they need to be woken up by the truth. When Nebuchadnezzar saw, what did those guys do? Did they fight against him? Did they resist? Nope. They trusted in God. They witnessed to the power of God. And that witness that the culture saw, that Nebuchadnezzar saw, said, whoa, hold on. Only 1%. I love Matthew Kelly. We talk a lot. So I said, Matt told me once that only 1% of Catholics are living their faith with passion and conviction. 1%. What do you think our country would look like? Our nation would look like? Our church, your family, if only 10% of Catholics practice their faith? That gave the witness that these three young men did. Gave the witness that the martyrs did. The Christians that are dying right now in those countries I mentioned earlier, who are dying for their faith in Jesus. And we're not being asked to die, at least not yet. But we have to be witnesses of God's love and God's truth. That's how we change the culture. That's how things change. We can't wait for the bishops. We can't wait for this or that. No, we have to do it. It starts with every single person learning their faith, owning their faith, and living their faith. Did these guys do catechesis with Nebuchadnezzar? Let me show you the catechism, Nebuchadnezzar. The way we bring people to faith is by allowing them to see Jesus alive in us. You have to understand, people may meet Jesus for the very first time when they meet you. That is their first encounter with Jesus, is when they meet you. Give you an example. My last parish mission, this is my last parish mission of this year. My last parish mission of Lent last year was Cheyenne, Wyoming. Preached at all the masses at the cathedral. The bishop was there. The bishop allowed me to preach. I gave the homily. So I'm distributing communion. A young man comes up. He didn't cry. He just comes and goes, "Can I talk to you?" Not right now, but after Mass. He goes, "Okay, I'll wait for you in the back." Okay. Right? So Mass finishes, walk out, and I'm greeting people. I see him stand. He's waiting. He's standing. So I greet a few people. I said, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "This is my first time at Mass." What? This is my first Mass. Are you Catholic? No. But you're here. Yeah. Wow, okay. He goes, I really like what you said. Really? Yeah. Can we talk some more? Yeah. So we sat down. He told me his story. He grew up as an Irish Catholic family, but was not baptized. Because his grandmother said, well, you should be old enough to decide for yourself whether you want to be baptized or not. So he's never baptized. Never went to church, nothing. And so, but he's been noticing during the pandemic, and he goes, wait a minute, all these things in the culture are changing, but the church seems to be steady. The church is not changing or wavering, and maybe there's something here. So his boss at his job is a Catholic. So he starts talking to his boss a little more about the faith. So he finally got to the point, his boss said, well, just go to Mass, go to church. So he just showed up. And I happened to be at that church, at the Mass that he decided to show. You think that was just coincidence? That's a God incidence. So he sat down, we talked. He goes, tell me more about what you said up there. I mean, my homily? Yeah, I don't know but tell me some more about what you want to know more. Remember I said the goal? How do I get the person in front of me to want to listen to more of what you have to say? It's not about winning arguments or pushing people away or getting angry. It's about introducing people to the love of Jesus Christ. That's effective evangelization. Introducing people to the love of God. We have to do that first. Before catechesis, before catechisms, before canon law, before dogma, people need to see the love of Christ first. Then they'll be ready for more. All right, wrapping it up. Psalm 27. So I love the Psalms. So this psalm is Mizmor Kuf Zion. That's Psalm 27, Mizmor Kuf Zion. I call it the woke psalm, right? I love this. It says, the Lord is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Before whom shall I shrink? When those who do evil draw near to devour my flesh, it is they, my enemies and foes, who stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then would I trust. There is one thing I ask of the Lord, only this do I seek, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to savor the sweetness of the Lord, to behold his temple. And then finally, I believe I shall see the Lord's goodness in the land of the living. That's heaven. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Be stout-hearted. And wait for the Lord. And I end with this. The great American writer Mark Twain once said, the two greatest days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. I want to challenge each and every one of you to allow the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith to give you your why. Amen. Thank you. Amen. All right, so once again, I'll be in the back just to greet you, say hi. And just one thing, I'm not going to be eating any of the stuff back there, as tempting as it is. Some of you, when I first got here, Deacon, when he picked me up at the airport, he said, I almost didn't recognize you. So what happened is I lost 110 pounds, and I want to explain that in a little bit, why that happened. I'm just going to be honest. So the fall of 2024, I was doing my usual thing, traveling. I did 257,000 miles all over the world, and I was traveling away from home, and I said, you know what? I'm traveling, I'm doing all this stuff for Jesus. I deserve that piece of cheesecake. I deserve that extra slice of whatever, you know, and a little bit too much of that. So it got to the point where I had to use a seatbelt extender on the plane and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I wasn't feeling good. So and my wife was all over my case. So I said, you know what? If God is asking me to do this, I need to be physically able to do what God is asking me to do. So I went to my doctor. Now, as wacky as Oregon is, the land of the fruits and the nuts, they do take the healthcare thing seriously. That farm-to-table, organic, locally sourced, they take that very seriously. So I actually saw my real doctor. Nothing against nurse practitioners or PAs, love you, but it's nice to see your own doctor every once in a while. So I sat down with her. I said, look, here's what's going on. She said, okay, well, first let's do some tests. Great. So we did a bunch of blood work and urine, all that stuff, and waited a couple weeks. I came back, looked at the test result, and I was pre-diabetic, had no idea, no clue, amongst other things. So she says, based on these test results, we think that a ketogenic way of eating would work for you. And I said, I've heard of keto. What is it exactly? So she started explaining it to me. Then before I left, she says this. You might also want to consider doing some medications and maybe even surgery. I said, hell no. I said, I'm not doing any of that. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do the work. And I was a little upset when I left that she would even recommend that. But you know what? I'm glad she did. Because when I left, I was driving home, I said, what else can I do besides just keto? So I thought about Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount. We hear the same reading every year on Ash Wednesday. Jesus says, when you fast. Not if, when you fast. You know what? I said, I'm not doing enough fasting. So I decided to do intermittent fasting. And then I decided to do exercise. So I started walking 5 to 7 miles a day. Now at first, the first few weeks was hell. I wanted to quit every day. This is stupid. I had those keto sugar withdrawal symptoms. I didn't walk a mile. My back was like, dang, my back, because I was so heavy. And another thing I did was I did a consecration to Mary. So when I left my career, my law enforcement career in 2012, I did a 33-day De Montfort consecration. I said I had not renewed it. So I said, let me do it again. So I ended on January 1st, 2025, the Feast of the Theotokos, Mary, Mother of God. That was day 33, and that's when I started this journey. Now, I've been doing it for 14 months now. I lost 110 pounds. I still got about 11 pounds or so, but I was well over 300 pounds when I started this. Now, and by the way, I keep the seatbelt extender in my bag as a reminder. Obviously, I don't need it anymore. Even for the small plane, I don't need it anymore. But it took a lot of hard work, a lot of prayer. And so if you're struggling with something, I guess my takeaway from this is trust the Blessed Virgin. I think that's the reason why I'm able to keep the weight off and keep going. Not because, the other stuff is helpful, that's great, but I really think I think that voice that kept saying, one more day, just one more day was Mary. I really believe that. So now I haven't felt this good since college. I am no longer pre-diabetic, because he said, well, come back in 6 months, we'll do another round of tests to see if you need the medication. Okay, let's do it. Came back 6 months later, she looked, just keep doing what you're doing. To this day, no meds, no surgery, nothing. Just hard work. So I guess it's trustworthiness, and that's what happens. That's why I'm not sick. Some people say, do you have cancer? Or some people say, I wasn't sure that was you until I heard your voice. Then I knew it was you. So I'm not sick or anything like that. I just wanted to let you know what was going on. So in the back there, I still have the USBs. Talking about USB-C devices with the 26 audio talks, the Bible study audio and video, and the deep dive on the Mass. Those are still available back there for you. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about praying with confidence, praying when it's hard, praying when life is challenging, praying when you don't feel like praying when you're angry with God. And I'm going to tie in at the end of that, what do you do about your adult kids who are away from church? Talk about praying with confidence. That's like the number one thing I hear people are praying for their kids or their loved one who is away from, a spouse even, who's away from the church. So we're going to talk about what we can do about that tomorrow as part of that talk. All right? So again, thank you so much for coming out. I'm really enjoying my time here. Father Dennis has been amazing, and all the hosts here. I did my radio show. If you listen today, my radio show for EW10 was done right here from Mark's office. Mark is up there, was very kind to allow me to use his office. So I'll be broadcasting the show live again tomorrow as well. And then I head to Steubenville for meetings, because I'm meeting with Father Pavanka on Wednesday, with Scott Hahn and stuff, because I'm working on some stuff with them, because I love Steubenville. And so please pray for that. Some really cool stuff could really be coming out of that. And I promise to keep you out. When I did my holy hour again today, I was going to do 2, but I wasn't able to. I had some meetings I had to do. And when you travel as much as I do, you got to keep up on stuff, or else you get behind. But I'm going to try to do 2 holy hours tomorrow and dedicate one of those holy hours to the people of this parish. So I felt very much at home here, very comfortable here amongst you. So thank you so much for that. It means a lot when you travel as much as I do to feel like you're at home in a parish. So I appreciate that. And thank you all very much. God bless you. Hopefully see you tomorrow.
Deacon, I think what you said, especially at the very end of the talk, the people in the back will be left with a lot of sweets. No one's going to eat the sweets, okay? So, but very good, very good. I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you very much. We've done last night, we supplement the deacon's ministry with a free will offering. You don't have to give anything, but if you'd like to give something, it goes directly to him. And so I'd ask the ushers to come forward now.